You scrolled through Netflix for 20 minutes. Nothing felt right. You skipped past a dozen options, each one blurring into the next. Or maybe you opened Spotify, heard 3 seconds of 5 different songs, and felt nothing. Just sound. Just images. But no feeling. Here's what's strange. You're not broken. Your capacity for emotion hasn't disappeared. You can still cry at old memories. You can still feel joy when something unexpected happens in real life. But when it comes to music and movies, the art that's supposed to move us, there's just this hollow space where the magic used to be. You might think it's just you getting older, becoming cynical, losing that teenage intensity where everything felt like life or death. But what if I told you it's not just you? What if scientists have actually discovered something disturbing about how modern art interacts with your brain? Something the industry doesn't want you to know, because they've found that your brain literally processes modern music differently than old songs. And the reason why will make you question everything you've been listening to. Picture this. You're driving, and suddenly a song from high school comes on the radio. Within 2 seconds, you're transported. You remember exactly where you were, who you were with, how the sunlight looked that summer. You can smell it. Your entire body responds. That's not nostalgia. That's neuroscience. Your brain has a specific region, the hippocampus, that links music to autobiographical memory. When you hear a song you loved at 16, it doesn't just sound good. It literally activates the same neurons that fired when you first heard it. Presses a button that releases dopamine, serotonin, and a cascade of chemicals that make you feel something real. But here's where it gets interesting. New music doesn't create those same pathways. Not because you're older, not because you're jaded, but because it's fundamentally designed differently. Modern songs are engineered to be catchy for 15 seconds. Just long enough to decide if you'll add it to your playlist. They're not built to live in your soul for 15 years. Scientists call this emotional imprinting. The music you hear between ages 12 and 22 actually rewires your brain's reward system. Those songs become part of your neural architecture. But new songs? They're like visitors. They pass through without leaving a mark. But why can't new songs create that same magic anymore? There's something different about how they're actually made now. And when you learn the truth, you'll never hear pop music the same way again. Here's a secret the music industry doesn't advertise. Most hit songs you hear on the radio weren't written by the artist singing them. They were written by the same 5 to 10 people. Max Martin, Dr. Luke, Shellback, a tiny group of Swedish and American producers who've cracked the formula. They work in rooms with dozens of other writers. They literally use spreadsheets analyzing what made previous hits successful. They know exactly which chord progressions trigger pleasure responses. They know the optimal length for a chorus. They know that putting the hook in the first 15 seconds increases streams by 43%. It's not music. It's mathematics. And it's incredibly effective at being catchy. But catchy and meaningful are not the same thing. Think about it like this. You're eating at different restaurants, but they all hired the same chef who uses the same recipe book. The burgers might taste okay, but there's no surprise, no personality, no soul. Your brain is smarter than you think. It recognizes patterns. When you hear the same chord progression for the 1,000th time, the same emotional arc, the same beat drops in the same places, your brain stops responding. It's like watching the same movie with different actors. The plot's predictable. The emotions feel manufactured. Because they are. And movies? They've become assembly lines too. But the reason they all feel the same is even more calculated than you'd imagine. It has to do with money. Lots of it. There was a time when Hollywood gambled. Directors had crazy visions and studios took chances. Someone greenlit Blade Runner, a slow, philosophical sci-fi noir that initially bombed. Someone said yes to Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, a non-linear romance that made your brain hurt. These movies didn't test well, but they became classics. Now, everything's a sequel, a reboot, a cinematic universe based on existing intellectual property. Why? Because modern blockbusters cost $200 million. When you spend that much money, you can't afford to be weird. You can't afford to be slow. You can't afford to make people uncomfortable. So studios test every scene with focus groups. They track eye movement. They measure heart rates. If test audiences in Cleveland don't like the ending, they reshoot it. If suburban moms find a character too abrasive, they soften the edges. The result is movies designed by committee. Stories with all the sharp corners sanded down. Nothing too sad. Nothing too strange. Nothing too real. Every hero gets a redemption. Every conflict gets resolved. Every ending feels satisfying in that generic, forgettable way that satisfies no one but offends no one either. But there's an even deeper reason why taking creative risks feels impossible now. And it has everything to do with how we actually watch movies today. The shift happened so gradually you probably didn't even notice. Think about the last time you sat in a dark theater, completely absorbed in a film for 2 straight hours. No phone, no distractions, just you and the story. When was that? Can you even remember? Now think about last week. You probably watched a movie on your laptop while scrolling through Instagram, or you had it playing on your TV while texting. You paused it 4 times to check notifications. You got up for snacks. You never fully entered the world the filmmaker created. Your brain has been rewired. Neuroscientists call it neuroplasticity. Your brain literally reshapes itself based on what you do most. If you spend 6 hours a day switching between TikTok, Twitter, texts, and emails, your brain optimizes for that behavior. It becomes excellent at rapid task switching and terrible at sustained focus. Movies and songs that require patience feel boring now. Not because they're badly made, but because your attention muscle has atrophied. It's like trying to run a marathon when you've only trained for sprints. Within 10 minutes, your brain is screaming for stimulus, for variety, for the next hit of dopamine. The art hasn't necessarily gotten worse. You've gotten worse at experiencing it. And here's the disturbing part: the companies making music and movies know this. They study your broken attention span, and they're designing art specifically for your distracted brain. Netflix knows exactly when you pause, when you rewind, when you give up and switch to something else. They have data on hundreds of millions of viewers, every second of every viewing session. And they use that data to tell creators exactly what works. The findings are brutal. If you don't hook someone in the first 90 seconds, they leave. So now every Netflix show opens with an explosion. A murder, a sex scene, something visceral to stop your thumb from scrolling. Spotify has similar data. Songs need to hook you in 5 seconds or you skip. So artists front-load the chorus. They put the catchiest part first. The rest of the song becomes filler, just 3 minutes of variations on that 5-second hook. This creates art optimized for the algorithm, not the soul. Movies with constant action and 0 quiet moments. Songs that scream for your attention because silence equals failure. Every second is engineered to stop you from leaving. But here's what gets lost. The soul needs those quiet moments. The pauses. The slow builds. The scenes where nothing happens except 2 characters looking at each other, and somehow you feel everything. Those moments can't exist anymore because your attention is the product being optimized. There's another hidden force killing emotional depth. And this one is purely about money. When you understand how artists actually get paid now, everything makes terrible sense. 20 years ago, you bought an album for $15. That meant the artist could spend a year in the studio, crafting 10 beautiful songs. They could experiment, throw out bad ideas, polish every detail until it was perfect. Because those 10 songs needed to be worth your $15. Today, an artist earns roughly 0.3 of a cent per stream. To make what one album sale used to pay, they need 5,000 streams. To survive, they need millions, tens of millions. And the only way to get that is to release constantly. So now artists put out a new song every 3 weeks. There's no time to pour your heart into something. No time to sit with an idea until it becomes profound. It's quantity over quality because that's what the economics demand. Release, promote, repeat. The treadmill never stops. Movies face the same problem. Netflix needs new content constantly to justify subscriptions. So instead of investing in 10 brilliant shows, they greenlight 100 mediocre ones. They need volume, a constant stream of content to fill the void. Imagine a chef forced to cook 50 meals a day. Some might be decent, but none will be masterpieces. You can't create art when you're running a factory. But even when artists manage to find time, even when they try to create something deep and real, there's a psychological trap waiting for them. One that modern culture has built without anyone noticing. We're terrified of negative emotions now. Someone releases a song about actual sadness. Not the pretty, poetic kind, but real depression. And the comments fill with, "This is too dark." Why can't artists make happy music anymore? Movies with tragic endings get criticized as trauma porn or grief tourism. There's this cultural pressure to keep everything positive, uplifting, empowering. And on the surface, that sounds nice. Who wants to be sad? But here's the secret that every great artist knows. Art that touches the soul often hurts. Think about the saddest song you truly love. The one that makes you cry every time. Probably helped you through something painful, didn't it? It gave language to a feeling you couldn't express. It made you feel less alone in your darkness. That song reached the deep places inside you precisely because it wasn't afraid to go there. Modern art is designed to be positive vibes only, emotionally safe, comfortable. But safe art doesn't transform you. It doesn't crack you open. It doesn't reach those deep places where real feeling lives. It's like only eating dessert, sweet, pleasant, and ultimately unsatisfying. The blues, the ballads, the tragedies, these weren't depressing. They were cathartic. They were truth. And there's actual biology behind why painful art creates deeper memories. Your brain is wired in a way that makes sadness stick. The science behind it is fascinating. Your brain evolved to remember extremes. If something almost killed you, you needed to remember that. If something gave you transcendent joy, you needed to remember that too. The middle ground, the merely pleasant, fades away. That's why you remember your worst day of high school and your best day, but not Tuesday of week 7. Emotional extremes create stronger neural pathways. They get encoded differently. Scientists have actually measured this. When you experience intense emotion, your amygdala releases hormones that tell your hippocampus, this is important. Save this. Music and movies that make you cry activate these memory centers more powerfully than ones that make you smile. It's not that happiness is bad. It's that emotional complexity. Songs that are simultaneously happy and sad, like Hallelujah or The Scientist, create depth. They live in you forever because they touch multiple emotional registers at once. Modern art often chooses one-dimensional emotions because they're easier to market. This is the feel-good movie of summer. This song will make you want to dance. Simple, clean, safe. But your soul doesn't want simple. It wants the full spectrum. It wants to feel alive, and being alive means sometimes feeling broken. But there's something else we're losing, something that goes beyond just emotional range. It's called cultural literacy. And without it, modern art has become incredibly shallow. Great art used to build on what came before. Tarantino referenced samurai films and blaxploitation. Radiohead sampled Miles Davis and the Beatles. There was this ongoing conversation between past and present, each generation adding new chapters to an old story. Now, many young artists haven't seen the classics. They grew up on YouTube and streaming algorithms that only feed you what you already like. If you watch one Marvel movie, the algorithm shows you 30 more superhero films. You never stumble onto Kurosawa. You never discover Nina Simone by accident. The result is art that's not standing on the shoulders of giants anymore. It's just copying last month's viral trend. It's referencing other reference-less things in this shallow loop that goes nowhere. Think of it like building a house. If you study architecture, the old masters, the principles, the history, you can build something beautiful and structurally sound. But if you've only ever seen houses on Instagram, you might copy the aesthetic without understanding why those design choices work. Modern artists aren't less talented. They're just culturally malnourished. They're creating in a vacuum, disconnected from the deep well of human artistic achievement that came before. And social media has made this crisis infinitely worse. It's changed what it even means to be an artist in a way nobody saw coming. Artists used to disappear. They'd vanish into their studios for 6 months, a year, however long it took. You'd see them when the album dropped. The work spoke. The art was the relationship. Now they're expected to be on Instagram daily, TikTok hourly, tweeting, vlogging, engaging with fans, building their personal brand. They're not just making art anymore. They're performing the role of artist constantly. And here's the problem. When you're always performing, you lose touch with your inner world, the messy, quiet, ugly place where real art comes from. Vulnerability becomes a marketing strategy instead of genuine expression. You start thinking, will this get likes? Instead of, is this true? Imagine trying to write in your diary while live streaming. You'd edit yourself. You'd perform. The truth would hide because truth is often embarrassing, boring, unsexy. It doesn't photograph well. It doesn't go viral. So artists split themselves in two. The public persona that feeds the algorithm, and the private self that slowly forgets how to create anything real because all the energy goes into the performance. The art suffers. The soul withers. And if you want to see proof of this shift, look at what's happened to the actual words in songs and movies. The change in lyrics and dialogue reveals everything. Listen to Simon and Garfunkel. The words of the prophets are written on the subway walls and tenement halls. One line and you see it. You feel the loneliness of urban life, the search for meaning in unexpected places. Now listen to a modern pop hit. I got that boom boom that all the boys chase. What does that mean? What image does it create? It's just syllables filling space. Sound without substance. This isn't cherry picking. Studies have actually analyzed this. Modern song lyrics score at a third-grade reading level on average. Vocabulary has decreased. Unique words per song have dropped 40% since the 1960s. Metaphors are rare. Poetry is nearly extinct. The same thing happened to movie dialogue. Compare Casablanca. We'll always have Paris. With modern Marvel quipfests where every character sounds like the same wisecracking comedian. Nothing quotable. Nothing that makes you think. Why? Because poetry requires time. Reading. Thinking. It assumes the audience wants to be challenged. Modern art assumes we want everything explained simply. Talks down to us. And over time, we've stopped expecting depth. We've accepted obvious rhymes, lazy metaphors, dialogue that sounds like it was written by a corporate committee. But wait, before you completely write off modern art, there's something we need to address. What if our memories are lying to us? Here's an uncomfortable truth. Every generation thinks their youth had better music. In the 80s, adults complained that MTV was killing real musicianship. In the 90s, people said rap wasn't real music. In the 2000s, everyone hated boy bands. Psychologists call this rosy retrospection. Your brain literally remembers the past more fondly than it actually was. You remember the great 80s songs, Journey, Prince, The Cure. But you forgot all the terrible one-hit wonders, the cheesy ballads, the forgettable pop that filled the charts. Maybe we're just doing that now. Maybe there's plenty of great modern art, and we're too nostalgic to see it. Maybe every generation is biased toward their youth. That's a fair point. Except for one thing, we can actually measure the changes. Multiple studies have analyzed millions of songs. The data is clear. Modern music uses fewer unique chords. Melodies are more repetitive. Timbral variety has decreased. Lyrics have objectively lower complexity. So it's not just nostalgia. Yes, our memories are somewhat biased, but they're biased toward something real. Music has become more formulaic. Movies have become more risk-averse. The numbers prove it. And that measurable change might be directly linked to something specific. How technology has completely rewired the way artists create. The tools changed everything. Technology was supposed to liberate artists. And in some ways, it has. But it's also created a strange paradox. Autotune can fix any wrong note. Pro Tools can edit any mistake. CGI can create any visual. Artists don't struggle with technical limitations anymore. You don't need to hit the high note perfectly. The software will correct it. You don't need to find a real location, just green screen it. Sounds great, right? But here's what we lost. Limitations create creativity. When the Beatles couldn't afford a full orchestra, they used weird recording tricks and invented new sounds. When filmmakers couldn't afford special effects, they wrote better stories. When singers couldn't hit impossible notes, they sang with raw emotion instead. Technology removed those beautiful imperfections. Modern music sounds perfect, mathematically perfect. Every note exactly on pitch, every beat exactly on tempo. But perfect sounds plastic. It sounds inhuman, because it is. Listen to a Beatles record. Paul McCartney's voice cracks. Ringo rushes the tempo slightly. It's imperfect, but those imperfections make it feel alive. Like real humans struggling to create something beautiful. Modern music sounds like it was made by computers, because increasingly it was. There's also something specific happening in movie marketing that's killing the emotional experience before you even watch. It's about trailers. And it's worse than you think. You've seen this happen. A movie trailer comes out and it shows basically the entire film. Every joke, every plot twist, every emotional beat. By the time you actually watch the movie, you've already experienced all the good parts. Why do studios do this? Desperation. The entertainment market is so crowded now. Hundreds of movies releasing every month. Thousands of songs every day. They're fighting for your attention against everything else on your phone. So they front-load everything good into the trailer because subtlety gets ignored. The same thing happens with music. Artists release the best 30 seconds as a TikTok clip. They need it to go viral or the song dies. So by the time you hear the full track, that moment you've already heard 50 times is old. Worn out. The surprise is gone. And surprise is everything. Psychologically, unexpected moments create stronger emotional responses. When you don't know what's coming. When a song builds to a chorus you've never heard. When a movie reveals something genuinely shocking. Your brain lights up. Dopamine floods your system. But when everything's previewed, analyzed, memed, and explained before you experience it, there's no discovery. No magic. Just the hollow feeling of recognition. And speaking of things that have disappeared, modern art has lost something even more fundamental than surprise. Something you probably haven't even noticed is missing. Listen to an old song. Really listen. Notice how they use silence. A quiet moment before the chorus explodes. A pause in the music where just the vocals carry. Space for the emotion to breathe. Now listen to a modern hit. It's compressed to be loud from the first second to the last. Wall-to-wall sound. The vocals, the drums, the bass, the synths. Everything competing for your attention simultaneously. Even the quiet parts aren't really quiet. They're just slightly less loud. Movies are the same. Constant soundtrack. No moments where you just hear characters breathing or footsteps or wind. Silence is treated like dead air. Like a mistake that needs to be filled. Why? Because silence is risky. What if people get bored? What if they check their phone? Better to keep the stimulation constant. Keep their brain engaged every single second. But here's what dies. Silence is where you feel your own reaction. When a devastating line of dialogue is followed by 3 seconds of silence, you process it. You feel it land. Without that space, art just washes over you. Sound and image that never penetrates because it never pauses long enough to let you catch up emotionally. And there's one more crucial thing that's changed. It's about who's actually making the art now, and why their comfort might be your emotional emptiness. Think about the greatest artists in history. Most of them were outsiders. People with deep pain. People who felt like they didn't fit. Bob Dylan, Joni Mitchell, Tupac, Kurt Cobain, they had something to prove. Something to express that was burning inside them. Now think about who becomes famous in the age of social media. Often it's people who already had advantages. Family connections. Money for good equipment. Safety nets if the art thing doesn't work out. Not always, but increasingly. And that's not their fault. But it changes the art. When you haven't really struggled, you create from theory instead of experience. The songs are about heartbreak you read about. The movies tackle issues you studied but never lived. The second-hand emotion. Real soul comes from lived experience. From the blues singer who actually lost everything. from the filmmaker who actually felt invisible and alone. Their art doesn't just describe pain. It is pain transformed. You feel the difference. Comfortable people make comfortable art. And comfortable art doesn't crack you open. It doesn't reach those deep places because it was never born from deep places. But here's the twist. What if the biggest problem isn't actually the artists or the industry? What if it's us? Be honest with yourself. When was the last time you really, truly listened to a new album? Not while doing something else. Not while working or driving or scrolling. Just sat down, closed your eyes, and gave music your full attention for 40 minutes? We used to do this all the time. You'd buy an album, play it 50 times, discover new details each listen. The guitar part you didn't notice the first time. The background vocals that only make sense in context. The way song 7 connects to song 3. Now we listen to songs once while doing 3 other things. We watch movies while texting, cooking, half present at best. We've trained ourselves for surface-level consumption. And then we wonder why nothing feels deep. The art might be shallow, but we're also shallow consumers. We're completing the cycle. Shallow art creates shallow audiences, creates demand for shallow art. Round and round. But here's the empowering part. You can break it. You can choose to listen fully, to watch without distractions, to give art a real chance to work on you. The soul requires presence. And presence is a choice you make every single time you press play. So what do we actually do about all this? Is there hope? Or are we just stuck in this cycle forever? Start small. Pick one album that moved you when you were younger. Really listen to it again. No phone. No multitasking. Just you and the music. Notice how different it feels when you give it your full presence. Watch a classic film you've never seen. Something slow. Something that requires patience. Shut off your phone. Sit with the discomfort when you get bored. That boredom is where the transformation begins. Seek out independent artists. The ones who aren't chasing algorithms. They're out there. Musicians releasing albums on Bandcamp. Filmmakers making weird movies that Netflix would never touch. Support them. Your attention and money are your vote for what kind of art survives. Give yourself permission to be bored. Boredom is where creativity grows. It's where you learn to sit with yourself again. To have actual thoughts instead of consuming everyone else's thoughts constantly. Read lyrics as poetry. Notice when you're consuming versus experiencing. Notice when you're genuinely feeling something versus just filling time. The difference becomes obvious once you start paying attention. Plenty of deep, soulful work exists today. It just requires effort to find. It requires intention. But that's always been true. The best art has always required something from you. And this brings us to the final, most important truth. The one that explains everything we've talked about. Here's what nobody wants to hear. Art that touches the soul asks something of you. It asks for your time, your full attention, your willingness to sit with discomfort, confusion, sadness. Modern life has conditioned us to avoid sacrifice. We want everything instant, food delivered, entertainment on demand, relationships that don't require difficult conversations. We've been trained to seek pleasure and avoid pain. But the soul doesn't work that way. The most meaningful song you ever heard probably required 30 minutes of listening before it clicked. The movie that changed you probably had slow moments where you felt restless. The book that rewired your brain probably had chapters that bored you before the revelation came. We're impatient with art now because we're impatient with everything. But depth takes time. Meaning takes effort. You have to bring something to the experience for it to give something back. Maybe modern art doesn't touch the soul because we've stopped offering our souls in return. We show up half-present, distracted, already thinking about the next thing, and wonder why nothing moves us. You can't feel deeply when you're refusing to go deep. The capacity for profound feeling isn't gone. It's not dead. It's just buried under layers of convenience and distraction and fear of boredom. But it's still there, waiting for you to remember what it feels like to truly pay attention. The music is still playing. The question is, are you listening?